and you have to come up with the angle on the interview, the story, the episode, whatever it is you're doing. And maybe you'll have guests, maybe you won't. All these things have to be considered. But to say that there's too many people doing it already, so I'm not going to try, is just a cop out.
Well, today I interview my friend Kerry, who runs the Financial Survival Network, and you can read all about that on his website. He has over 7,000 podcast episodes. He's written 4 books, and we dive into all of it on today's episode. So stay tuned in just a few moments for the Finally Marketing That Works podcast. Well, hello and welcome to another edition of the Finally Marketing That Works podcast. I'm here with a friend, Kerry from Florida, right? And Kerry, how you doing today?
Hey, all is good. The hurricane passed us by and didn't do much damage. So be grateful for small favors, right?
Yeah, no kidding. Elsa was going to hit that south area, and then I think as we speak, I think it's kind of in that Tampa area, which I didn't see whereabouts in Florida you are. Whereabouts you at there, Kerry?
I am in Palm Beach County, Florida.
Awesome. I live in St. Lucie County, so we're pretty much neighbors.
We're neighbors. Yeah, literally 45 minutes away.
Yeah, man, not far at all. Well, I'd love to, before we just kind of dive in, I'd love you to introduce yourself to the audience. Tell them a little about yourself, what the day in the life of Kerry looks like, maybe some of your background, and you got a big background in law and some other serial entrepreneur stuff. So I'll let you take it away, and we'll dive in.
Well, I'm a recovering attorney, still licensed in the state of New York, but no longer practice for a living. I'm a professional podcaster. Have been doing it for over 10 years, over 7,000 episodes published, for better or for worse. And now I do corporate communications for resource companies around the globe, and that's my main business.
Okay. And what does that specifically look like day to day for Kerry and helping these corporations with that? What does that look like?
Well, I'm interviewing people on the economy, on resources, on scarcity, things like that. And, I'll do 2 to 3 segments a day. Also do a trading segment called Daily Market Wisdom with master trader Nick Santiago. So basically educating people about what's going on with the economy and things you can do to make your life better and to not be a casualty of the new normal.
Okay. And so to keep up with, can somebody follow that and kind of keep up with what's going on in the world politically, or do they have to kind of still get their big resources from the big channels, or can they kind of just keep up with the big things going on if they tune into your show?
Well, we avoid politics in the current environment because we don't want to be censored by our digital overlords, if you know what I mean. Yep. So this is a no politics zone at this point. Kind of got into it more than I wanted to way back when, and then reason prevailed. So I kind of just said no more. So we aggregate news, though, and it's got a libertarian kind of bent. Or those of you who are looking to see beyond the headlines, we like to deconstruct the news a lot because you're not getting served well by mainstream channels any longer, if you ever were. But obviously now it's much more blatant than it ever was before.
Okay. And with this podcast, you said 7,000 episodes so far?
Correct. 7,000 episodes. Hard to believe.
So obviously you believe in podcasting, and obviously we're on a podcast right now for mine, but I would love for you to even just dive into the podcasting world, because for the listeners tuning in, we're really whole vision of this show is people tuning in to get marketing ideas, things that they could do to maybe grow their business, grow the business that they're working for, suggest ideas to maybe a corporation they're with. And maybe it's podcasting. Maybe that's one of the avenues of marketing that they should entertain, in addition to maybe social media and some digital ads. So I'd love for you to kind of just sell podcasting to the listeners today, for maybe if somebody's entertaining the idea of starting their own, and what all is entailed for that, and how you got to 7,000 episodes in just 10 years.
I can't believe it myself. Well, look, podcasting, pretty simple. It's just radio. It's on-demand radio. It's you record an episode, people listen to it when they want, not at the mercy of some program director at some radio station someplace. Regular radio is kind of dying, so we're going to be left with a different over-the-air terrestrial radio. Will always be there. It's just going to be much different than it is now. So I got into it. I was listening to other podcasts 10, 12, 13 years ago, said, how hard can it be to do your own podcast? And I always wanted to do radio. I like mass communications. And basically, podcasting was a way to own your own radio station without having to go out and buy one. And, I started it. I took Cliff Ravenscraft's course, Podcasting A to Z, and that kind of changed it all. At that point, I was having thousands of people listening to every show. And every month, over 50,000 people tune into a YouTube video cast or a podcast every month. So, marketing, you can't just say do podcasting and that'll make you rich. Although I know somebody who, Jason Hartman, has been doing podcasting longer than me. It's the only marketing he's ever really done for his company, and he's made a fortune off of it. I know lots of people who've used podcasting to make vast sums of money. For myself, I like it's authoritative marketing, but if you're going to do a podcast, you should write a book as well. The two combined really will set you apart. Most people cannot get their act together to actually write a book. So combine that with a podcast, with YouTubing, and you really have something there.
Okay. And so obviously, I love to play devil's advocate. So let's, people are listening going, all right, Kerry, 7,000, I could never get 7,000 episodes going. And, oh man, I want to start this podcast, but man, 10 other people have a food podcast already. Why would I start another food podcast? So what would your response be to these people who are kind of talking themselves out of it because the market there's so many of them already out there? So why would I just start another one and make noise?
That argument could be made for anything. When you're making arguments why you shouldn't act, you need to go re-examine your goals and what it is you're looking for. Look, there might be 10 things on food, but you bring something to the table that nobody else can bring. That's your perspective. So you got to have a little strength, a little fortitude, a little confidence in your ability to communicate a message that others aren't able to, and come up with an angle. Like every story, every interview I do, there's always an angle involved. And you have to come up with the angle on the interview, the story, the episode, whatever it is you're doing. And maybe you'll have guests, maybe you won't. All these things have to be considered. But to say that there's too many people doing it already, so I'm not going to try, is just a cop-out.
I totally agree with you, because I kind of would relate it into simple terms for people listening. Those that, their favorite chicken sandwich. Maybe they like Chick-fil-A, which I hope everybody does, but maybe the people they'd rather go to Popeyes, which, hey, good Popeyes chicken sandwich now and again, it's good. But, you got different chicken places, and some people like ones over the other. Or I was related back to church. There's so many churches out there, and you might relate to a pastor in a congregation better at this one than your friend might to this other one. But there's churches everywhere. So yeah, you're going to relate. It's going to relate to different people. Same with your content, just like mine. I second guessed myself starting a marketing podcast. I feel like they're everywhere and they're all out there, but certain people might listen to my content over somebody else's and vice versa. They might not like mine, but they might like some other marketing guys. So don't let that keep you from starting it. Plus, I like meeting new people. So this has also been really fun to meet new people with the podcasting world.
Yeah.
And so for getting started, where would you point somebody in the right direction? Obviously, I know you've written some books, and maybe one of those is the best one. I know you mentioned that the guy you just mentioned in his book. Where would you kind of tell people to start if they were really looking to entertain the idea of it? Do they need some fancy equipment? Do they need a whole bunch of softwares? Do they need to meet the people live, or can they do it remote like you and I are doing? Where would you point them in the right direction?
Yeah, I would say do it remotely, because, well, equipment, you could spend $50. I would recommend that you buy the Shure USB podcasting mic or the Rode, one of those that really is geared towards podcasting. You get some software, you can get Audacity, you sign up for a podcast server, you go to Fiverr, you get a podcast square made, and then you just start doing it. Your first 5 shows, probably want to outline them at the very least or have a script. You have to learn how to read without sounding like you're reading. That's a skill in and of itself. And of course, you should buy my book, Viral Podcasting, A Proven Process to Earn a Six-Figure Income from Your Show. It's on Amazon. And I know a lot of people out there have benefited from it. I've sold hundreds, over 500 copies of a self-published book that I never attempted to really market in any way or form. So, and you never know what's going to happen. I formed a lasting partnership for the last 4 years that I would have never, ever been able to do had I not written that book. So, all these things, you can do it.
Fantastic. And for somebody launching a podcast, for you, how do you market your podcast? And have you had any successes or flops when marketing it, or do you kind of just let it do its thing out there on its own, and then it just gets followers that way? And how would you tell somebody to market their podcast?
Basically, you market it through wise choice of guests if you're going to get guests, right? And you're going to basically you have to do it. Use link shares. So you interview people. When I started, I knew there were a lot of popular websites out there that wanted media content that they just weren't able to get. That's a little harder now than it was then, because anyone decent can get multiple interviews all over the place. So compiling an email list is crucial. All right. Tell everybody you know to recommend your podcast. Get up on iTunes, get up on every podcatcher and every podcast list out there. All right. Even if you have to pay for a couple of them. And it's that simple, really.
Well, there you go. So anybody listening, if you haven't started a podcast, look at the idea of starting it. It's really, I don't know, I wouldn't say simple, but it can be simple because it depends on how difficult and how much you really want to put into it. But it's as easy as just recording and publishing it online with some different platforms. And if you have any questions, please buy Kerry's book, and you can find it on Amazon. Mention the name again for us, Kerry.
Sure. It's called Viral Podcasting, A Proven Process to Earn Six Figures from Your Show. And yeah, it's as hard or it's as easy as you want to make it.
Fantastic. Well, Kerry, thank you so much for your time, for hopping on the podcast and talking about podcasting. I wish you 7,000 more episodes of awesome content for yourself. And hopefully we'll touch base and meet sometime in person there in Florida. All right.
Love to. Well, 7,000 episodes. It's the equivalent of wishing somebody a long, happy life.
Take care, Kerry.
All right. Thanks so much.
Well, as always, I hope you learned something from today's episode with Kerry. If you want to read anything about him, you can find it on his website, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Check out his podcast. Again, there's over 7,000 episodes. And hey, read one of his books. He's got 4 of those as well. Tons of information and things you can learn from him. We'll be here next week with another awesome guest. So we'll see you next week on the Finally Marketing That Works podcast.